All right. Good, good. Is it good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I had a bit of a technical challenge there, which is why I'm, is it 3 minutes late? But just as well, I suppose we can proceed. I wanted to find out if, well, not find out. I wanted to kindly ask if one of you could just confirm, please, if you can hear me, and also if you can see my screen. I know you can see my screen, I think, because I'm logged on to a different device here, but I'd appreciate it if you could confirm if my audio is just fine. Thank you.
We can.
Wonderful, wonderful, great. Thank you very much. So what we did yesterday, well, is it yesterday or the last time we met? Really, not yesterday. Uh, Thursday, I think it was, or something. Um, was we started our discussion of management information systems, and I think we spent a great deal of time looking at some classic, I guess what I would personally call classic examples of management information systems. But before that, we highlighted the fact that um, a management information system is actually a type or a form of what's called a management support system. And a management support system is in turn a category of an information system. It's a very interesting definition, if we can call it that, that we introduced you to. So we introduced this notion that your management information system is primarily aimed at performing three core duties. Um, so it's meant to help collect, summarize data. Okay. Um, it also functions in such a way that it will process the summarized data before, because it turns out that for the summarized data to make sense, it needs to be organized in a certain way, um, so that subsequently, this is yet another function of management information system, information can be extracted from the platform, right? So there's collection of summarized data, processing and aggregation of the collected data. Aggregation simply means connecting different pieces of data. And I think one of the examples I gave is to say your student record, right? Um, UNZA will collect bits and pieces of data associated with you as an individual who is enrolled into a program or registered into a program at UNZA. There'll be your demographic details, things like your uh, uh, program of study, or level of study and program of study, um, and as part of them trying to collect data associated with the program that you're studying, they will include details like which school and which department. In fact, we can go a step further and start looking at data that is collected that is specific to the courses themselves. So you look at courses, individual courses like MSP 5012, which will have a course convener. It has credit scores associated with it, right? It has assessment categories. All of these things are what we are calling data, and these are the things that a management information system will collect. Okay, not really automatically collect, really, but typically human beings will use specific features of a management information system to collect or to gather this type of data, and then internally that data will be processed. So, for instance, it may be processed in such a way that information about uh, students enrolled into MSP will be aggregated. So, if I was to go into the system, management information system like UNZA's student information system, I'll be able to gather information about, oh, there's this student called Lighton, and Lighton has a student ID of 2024, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or something like that, right? The NRC for Lighton is 48, like that, or something, right? What else? Date of birth will be there as well, right? So depending on how I would want this information to be aggregated. And Lighton is enrolled into, maybe I would say Lighton is enrolled into MSP 5012 or something like that. Right? Because there could be other courses that Lighton is enrolled into. And more on that just now, the duplication of data and stuff. But ultimately, this management information system will process the data. So the data once collected individually, because this would be my demographic details, right? My NRC, my name, my date of birth. These things may be coming from elsewhere. They may have been collected differently. Typically, demographic details will be collected when you're applying to enroll into a program. Okay, so you'll be given an offer letter, and then afterwards you'll be issued with a computer number or something, right? And then at a later stage, during your registration process, you will enroll into specific courses, because it turns out that in some cases, some courses may be, mandatory. Some of them may be electives, for instance, right? But ultimately, this information will be aggregated or stitched together like this, and then you can then generate information. Now, the interesting thing about the information that you're generating is you may not necessarily just be interested in collecting information about Lighton, but maybe you'll be interested in collecting information collectively tied to other people that are enrolled into the course. Like, for instance, I would say I want a list of all students that are enrolled in MSP 5012 in the academic year 2023/24 or something. Okay, so what I would do is I would use the system to collect this information, right? Anyway, so MIS, as we said, are a form of information system, and their core functions collect data, process, and then presentation of information. And then we went through a series of systems, and all the while when we were going through these applications, we were latching back to the three core functions: collection of summarized data, processing of the data, and presentation of information or extraction of information. And this is key here, right? When you're using a system, a management information system, and I think I gave an example of core MIS. In terms of information can be presented to you as a user of the system. Like, it to be static information, like what you're seeing on the dashboard right now, is being presented to you. In some instances, you may want to extract information, so you can generate reports, for instance, or you export the data in a CSV format or some similar format of that sort, right? So anyways, we went through some examples. I think vast majority of us are aware of NAPSA. I introduced us to the Open Insurance Management Information System. Maybe we can use this as a case study going forward, because it presents a classic example of a social protection management information system, integrated actually, quite robust. All right, just showcasing, and I think we had gotten to a stage where we're showcasing how ZSPIS looks like. For those of you that may not be aware of what ZSPIS is, so this is a system that the ministry would typically use to disperse funds, for instance, right, to eligible beneficiaries or to enroll new beneficiaries. It typically has a broad spectrum of features. Features are nothing more than a specification of what a software does. It's like, and I think this is probably best explained from the point of view of a system that everybody uses. Okay, WhatsApp. If you look at WhatsApp, right, WhatsApp has a number of features, but one of the most crucial features of WhatsApp is it enables you to send messages. You send messages via WhatsApp. Now, if you pause and think about it, you begin to appreciate the fact that sending of messages is done in a variety of ways. There are a series of functionalities that WhatsApp has, right? So you can send a voice note. You can send a text message, right? You can make a video call. You're sending information in all these different instances. So a feature is just nothing more than a service that is provided by a system. So in the case of this piece, there is a service that allows you to generate complex reports. There is a service that allows you to, I guess the targeting feature here would be to target specific beneficiaries or something. There is a service that allows you to gain information about beneficiaries and their corresponding households. A dedicated service or a feature associated with households. So if you click this feature, you'd gain access to things like the total number of individuals in that particular household, a distribution of how many for each particular individual in the household. What is their gender, for instance? You know, do they have some sort of disability and all those things? Okay. Yeah, and then we notice that there's a feature that allows you to make changes to beneficiaries, for instance, and many more features, right? So there's features, and it turns out that this piece, and this piece I imagine is I may be butchering the is it acronym here? Is it an acronym here or? Yeah, it is an acronym anyway. It's Zambia Integrated Social Protection Information System. Okay, and really, in as much as it is currently primarily used to manage programs such as social cash transfer program. In this particular case, the 1,000 days program, whatever that was, it actually can be customized to do much more than that. Okay, it's based on a freely available and open source platform. We'll have a discussion very soon when we start looking at the 6 core aspects of an information system. We'll look at the information technology layer, and as part of our discussion of the information technology layer, we will be discussing software. Now, when we look at software, software is associated with a variety of so-called business models. It's a service, quite all right. Because it's a service, in some instances, you may want to look at the software from the perspective of how people make money out of the software. When people create software, sometimes they will create it such that you need to make a subscription so that you're given a valid license for you to use the software. Or it will be provided to you in such a way that you download some file, a .ex file or MSI file, and then you double click on it so that you install the software. In other instances, however, you don't need you don't need to pay money to get a valid license for you to use that software. It's just available for free. Okay, so it's free software. In other instances, the piece of software can be accessible. You're allowed to legally access it by just not downloading the .exe file, but you have access to the actual original source code. So the instructions that were used to construct the software. What that means is that it's open source. It's open source in that people can modify it so that they come up with different derivations. This piece is based, it uses the base framework software that is used to, or that was used to create this piece or to deploy this piece, is called Core MIS. It's a piece of software by the World Bank, funded by the World Bank, and it's freely available and open source. Because it's freely available, the ministry gained access to the source code for free, obviously, and because it's open source, they were able to modify it in such a way that if you look at this here, there are certain things that you cannot see here, like the 1,000 days, right? Menu item here. It's not here on Core MIS. If you look at this piece, there's nothing like savings here, but on Core MIS, there's a feature called savings, right? Anyways, that's that. So it's based on Core MIS. So Core MIS was modified to get something like this. Now, it turns out here that this platform is integrated, and the way it's implemented, really, it's implemented in such a way that its interface integration simply means, setting up or building the software in such a way that it is easily connected to other existing services. Now, the integration of this piece is done in such a way that for data collection, right? Remember, we made mention of the fact that a management information system collects summarized data, processes data, and presents information. So from a perspective of collecting data, it turns out that this piece is integrated with Kobo Toolbox. I don't know how many of you have heard of Kobo Toolbox, but if you ever found yourself, maybe you did a management and an M&E program or something, you may have been introduced to Kobo Toolbox. It's a freely available platform, software, really. A number of entities use this. I know we, not too long ago, we were, it's been a while now, I think it's been maybe 2 years, maybe a year or two or so. We're doing a project with the JCTR, the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection. We were in essence setting up a research data management infrastructure for them. And in the process, we discovered that part of how they collect data, I don't know how many of you are aware of the fact that, I think you are aware anyway, but we built this system. It's called the JCTR repository. What they do is part of what they do is they make available not the BNB, it's no longer a basic needs basket, but it's a basic needs and nutrition basket, which explains why, if you've been following through, I've seen a lot written about, the JCTR BNNB is what? They claim that the BNNB for Lusaka is above 10,000. I've seen a lot of this. I don't know if you've seen what's typically written in the news. I've especially seen JCTR plus Zambian Watchdog. I've seen a lot written about this on Zambian Watchdog page, for instance. Very weird things. Recently, there we go. And I just found it here. People don't understand how this works, right? I mean, sometimes, when you know certain things, when you're, privy to certain information, you just sit back and just say it's such a shame that people are this ignorant. But there's a nutrition part, right? So the contents that you find in a BNNB for Lusaka, for instance, will include certain things, right, that have nutritional value in terms of food. It's no longer just carpenter here. Anyways, I was just mentioning that the JCTR, the way they collect, working on that project gave me an idea, really, to be honest, of how, and I guess we can look at that, of how JCTR compiles this information. Okay? It turns out that when they're collecting some of this data, they use Kobo Toolbox, is the point I was trying to put across, long story short here. But anyway, at your own time, if you didn't know about this service, especially if you find yourself doing this sort of work, just know that the information that JCTR compiles is publicly available, actually. All of it. They have actually a historical record of all the BNB reports for most of the towns, actually, and including data sets, right? They also conduct a satellite survey, if you didn't know. So the more details, nuanced satellite home survey. You probably want to look at that if you didn't know about that here. I don't know if it's the reports we should be looking at. I don't know, maybe it's the reports or the statements. I think it's the reports. It'd be nice to look at the more recent report or something. Maybe not. Maybe not. But this is what I was talking about. I was talking about the excuse me, the BNNB, right? The nutritional value comes in because you notice that now you have things like, oh, cassava flour, right? I guess it does have nutritional value or something. Bananas are there now, you know. Previously, if you look at historical BNNB reports, you would not gain access to this. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm wondering if maybe we can reach out to our colleagues from JCTR to find out if there's a system that can be classified as a social protection management information system. I don't know. But anyways, there we go, right? So Kobo Toolbox is integrated with ZSpace in such a way that, so the integration is done in such a way that ZSpace makes use of the Kobo RESTful API. And we will discuss RESTful APIs. An API is nothing more than an application programming interface. It's a way in which systems speak to each other. You know, so when you and I are accessing a piece of software, like ZSpace, we are mostly interested in, or we interact with ZSpace by pointing and clicking. You know, click this button and it will generate a report. Enter this data and click this button and the new record will be, you know, entered to persist into the ZSpace system or something. Well, when systems are speaking to each other, not a human being interacting with a system, but when an external system is interacting with another system, they speak together by exchanging data. So requests and responses, right? There's a back and forth here. And typically, this interaction is done via application programming interfaces, APIs. So in this case, we see here that, you know, the interaction between ZSpace and Kobo Toolbox is done via the Kobo RESTful API, ideally. So this would be through, let's say, somebody maybe using a tablet and collecting data about new beneficiaries in the field or something, right? You are using ZSpace, but ZSpace is interfaced with Kobo Toolbox because of nice features like the offline features, right? Inherently built within Kobo Toolbox. But anyway, we see also that this system here is integrated because there's an inbuilt MSPG, a mobile service payment gateway, right? So the way this works is if you are using ZSpace and you want to pay beneficiaries, I imagine, I don't know how this works because I don't have access to ZSpace myself, but if you read through the specification, the way this is supposed to work is that when you are wanting to do a batch payment of beneficiaries, beforehand you would have specified to say this beneficiary is linked to an MTN mobile money account. This one is linked to Zanaco or something. This one is linked to Zona or Airtel. For this, right, to be effectively done, what the people behind ZSpace did is they built a mobile service payment gateway. So it's like a layer that will facilitate payment to these different payment service providers like Airtel, MTN, Zanaco, Zona, Natsave, UBA, Bank ABC, Atlas Mara, and Indo-Zambia Bank, and I guess it's Zamtel Mobile Money or something. So from the perspective of ZSpace, it doesn't matter if your client, the beneficiary, has a Natsave account or if they prefer to be paid using MTN, right? You just do this configuration as you are recruiting, right, the beneficiary. So you just specify how they're going to be paid or something. This is done, this integration is done via APIs. So you notice here that you have, this is CoinMyS, but this is ZSpace really, is interfaced with this mobile service payment gateway via a RESTful API. You notice there's MSPG REST API. And the way this REST API functions is you are pushing certain types of information. So you push an invoice to a mobile service payment gateway to say, well, this is the sort of payment that we need to make to this particular subscriber, to these particular subscribers. And then the mobile service payment gateway will send back a response. The response could be that this has been successful and this is the amount that has been credited to the account holder. Or it's a failure. It's much like what typically happens when you're sending money from MTN to Airtel. Sometimes it will fail, sometimes it will be a success. What you get back as a response, that SMS message, is a transaction status to say this amount that you wanted paid to this account has been paid, and here's a receipt, which also includes how much money you now have in your account or something. But observe, you have the mobile service payment gateway, which then is interfaced with these individual mobile payment service providers. The beauty with this, right, is that if it turns out that so-called Z Mobile, I don't know how many of you are now subscribed to Z Mobile. If it turns out that the new mobile service provider, Z Mobile, starts a mobile money service and they become popular and you have beneficiaries that will prefer to be paid using Z Mobile, you can just plug in Z Mobile here to this mobile service payment gateway. In essence, so integration, right, is an integrated social protection management information system. And really, integrated social protection management, information systems are specifically designed and implemented in such a way that they're able to integrate with not just one or two mobile service, not just one or two external systems or services, but a number of them, right? So the diagram is just showcasing a hypothetical scenario where you would have a social protection management information system, this oval shape here in blue at the middle, and we see that it's exchanging data. It could be exchanging data or it could be interoperable with internal management information systems. So it's like when you have ZSPIS. If you have other management information systems that are used for different things within the ministry, you can actually interface them with ZSPIS. In addition, we see that ZSPIS itself could actually be interfaced to different types of registries. Perhaps a single registry, right, that is used to store or to compile all potential beneficiaries. And more on that when we have a discussion of single registries and social registries. Or indeed, we can have the social protection management information system, this is being interfaced with a civil registry. Let's say if we had a nationwide database that keeps track of all the 25 million plus people in Zambia, right? When they get the NRCs, when they are born, you know how when somebody is born, they're given a birth certificate or something, right? Under normal circumstances, we're supposed to have a civil registry that keeps track of all of the human beings and their statuses, right? If you pass away or something, if you die, then what will happen is a death certificate will be issued and your status is marked according in the civil registry. It becomes crucial to interface that sort of infrastructure with the social protection management information system because you can potentially prevent fraudulent activities from happening, right? Like adding non-existent people to the list of beneficiaries, ghost beneficiaries, if you will, But we see here that we can also interface an integrated social protection management information system with systems that are owned by different institutions. These different institutions could be local, like it could be other government institutions or government ministries. I believe there's one of you who mentioned that they could be wrong here, but they work for the Ministry of Finance. So if their work, right, involves wanting to gain access to information in this piece, this could easily be done by integrating this piece with whatever system they currently have in the Ministry of Finance or something. In addition, with an integrated social protection management information system, and this is the best case scenario, by the way, you could actually connect it to other systems, right? Maybe some of the people that are funding some of these projects, like if the World Bank is funding a social cash transfer, I don't know if it's a World Bank that gave the Republic quite a bit of money here. I remember reading about it. Maybe one of the things they may ask for is that they need live data from the system, right? So what you do is you'd connect, or they would connect whatever system they're using with this piece, right? So in essence here, this is how your integrated social protection, management information system would actually function in an ideal case. Unfortunately, in the case of this piece, this is not the case, unless things have suddenly changed. Certainly, we don't have a civil registry, right? Zero. I don't think this piece is interfaced with other important systems that are used in ministries like the Ministry of Finance, right? I would be interested in knowing if DMMU, for instance, has systems in place that are connected with ZSPIS, because this is all important information, right? With the so-called drought that has hit Zambia here, there are likely people that are already under the social cash transfer program that are benefiting, right, from whatever initiatives DMMU is putting in place. Now, granted, maybe DMMU is working hand in hand with the ministry here to ensure that that's not the case. But in an ideal case, this is how an integrated, social protection management information system would actually work. All right. So you'll soon see, once we have a discussion of single registries, registries really at a later stage, that the single registry would act as a repository, a storage, in other words, of data. Because remember, what you're doing, right, when you're using a tool like ZSPIS, is we're saying it is used to collect summarized data, right? When you collect that data, it has to be stored somehow, persistently, right? In fact, depending on what the retention period is at the ministry, it's likely this information will persist long after all of us are dead and gone, right? But the question is, where is it stored, right? It's typically stored in what's called a single registry. It's nothing more than a repository of raw data that is collected. And specifically, the data that is stored in a single registry would be data on all the potential beneficiaries and actual beneficiaries of whatever social protection programs may be running. So in the case of the ministry, it would be like STC, social cash transfer, SCT, and perhaps the JAWS program, perhaps, and also the 1,000 days program as well. Okay. And then we see that, or we'll soon see here, that the fact that this is an integrated social protection management information system means that there are supposed to be inbuilt services, software features that will enable, right, the social protection management information system like the ZSPIS to function the way it's supposed to function. These services or these features are what we are calling application software services. They enable end users within the ministry or outside the ministry to interact with the data. Because when you're using ZSPIS, what you are doing for the most part is you're interacting with the data stored in ZSPIS, or you're interacting with ZSPIS so that you store new data within ZSPIS, or you're interacting with ZSPIS so that you edit, make changes to existing data or something. Okay. So you have application software services. Right? And you'll soon see we have a dedicated discussion of how exactly you narrow down on what sort of services should be inbuilt within this system. So let's say DMMU did not have a system for managing relief being given to people adversely affected by the drought. One of the things you would have to do before the system is built is you go out there and you identify these features that the program should have, right? So you gather requirements, and then ultimately you narrow down on the specific software services that should be integrated with the system, and then the software developers and the software engineers and the system designers and system architects who build the software itself, and ultimately you have a system like this. Okay, so you have the application software, and there's a broad spectrum of services generally, right? We'll have a discussion about these things here. And we see here that the application software services will enable end users to interact with the system, and specifically the services will be there to perform these three core duties we highlighted. These things we're calling application software services are there to facilitate collection of summarized data. This collection could be in so many different ways. Like for ZSPIS, you're collecting demographic details, details about geolocations, details about households, details about how beneficiaries want to be paid, right? Is it MTN, Airtel, Zone, right? All of these services would be tied to that specific core function of facilitating collection of summarized data. Okay? So we see that application software will facilitate functionalities such as, collection of data, right? Which is core function 1.
Dr. P,
Yes, hi.
I have maybe
I'm not sure if it's just me, but I think you're.
That and them collecting data.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but I think you are breaking there. Do you want to repeat your question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you now. I can hear you now. I'll need confirmation. Is this just me, or is everybody having a hard time making sense out of what Ms. Zulu is saying? I may have to change my connection, maybe. Is it just me, or is? Can you hear what she's saying?
We can't get her equally.
Ah, yes. So if you can hear us, Jen, do you want to maybe try and switch connections, and then I have a sneaking suspicion it could be one of those interesting questions. Switch connections or something, and then ask away, or you could type in the info messages in the chat, and then we'll read out your question or something. It's always nice when we have a bit of back and forth here. Very, very nice like that. So I was mentioning that these services, there could be a lot of services, right? But fundamentally, these services can be categorized into three. There will be services that will facilitate collection of summarized data, services that will facilitate extraction and presentation of information, right? And then services that will facilitate processing of the data. A common service associated with presentation of information is report generation. And we see this from a system like ZSpace, right? One of the very first features here in this vertical menu item in the left here in this red bounding box is reports. And in fact, if you click under beneficiary, there are other features that will allow you to generate beneficiary specific reports. Okay, you're extracting information. Not necessarily something that may be tied to the three core functionalities of an MIS platform, but there's also this notion that MIS platforms are supposed to be implemented in such a way that they're able to exchange data with other systems, right? It could be internal systems within the organization. This organization could be DMMU, the ministry, could be a not-for-profit, right? I don't know if the Red Cross does this, maybe not, right? But also exchanging data with external entities, external systems external to that department, to that ministry, indeed to that country as well. Right? So it's notion of exchanging data is what's referred to as interoperability. So a system is considered interoperable if it's able to exchange data. A classic example of interoperability, in case people are wondering here, is obvious one. I think I've mentioned this: sending money from MTN to Airtel. And we do this through, in case you didn't know this, but Zambia has a national financial switch. I don't know if you've heard about this. If you haven't, and if you haven't been paying attention, you'll notice that when you send money from Airtel to MTN, or from MTN, I use MTN myself, if you send money from MTN to Airtel, your SMS report that is generated would typically say, if you say something like, I did a transaction, I think as recent as today, I think the 18th, yellow payment of 73 kwacha to Airtel NFS, right? So it's a national financial switch. MTN has APIs, right, which makes it possible for it to send money to other networks, for instance. Another classic example of interoperability is, I don't know if you've seen this, but in some instances, when you're logging in to systems, and I'll use an example like, I don't know, maybe, okay, I use a lot of Stack Overflow myself, but it also applies to a number of other systems. I don't know if you've seen instances where if you say log in or sign up, you can log in the traditional way where you type in your email and your password, but you can also log in using Google or using GitHub, or you can log in using Facebook. This is possible because, in this particular case, Facebook is interoperable with this system called Stack Overflow, this service called Stack Overflow. So Facebook would speak to Stack Overflow, or Google would speak to Stack Overflow. Interoperability, right? These integrated social protection management systems are built to be interoperable like that. Now, just to try and provide a broader overview here, just rubbing it in, we are saying that management information systems are a category of management support systems, and management support systems are a form of information system. Well, an information system really is a computerized information system is primarily used to collect, process, and disseminate data. Well, collect data, process data, and disseminate information. And typically, really, an information system, we're talking about information system, but because an MIS is a type of information system, we are pretty much talking about an MIS here. An information system is really viewed as a set of interrelated elements or components that will collect, process, and disseminate data as information. And really, the block diagram below just showcases how an IS works, right? More or less like an MIS, but in this particular case, we are generalizing the data, right? We're not saying it's summarized data, but it's just data in general. It could be detailed data, or it could be summarized data, right? Depending on the type of information system you're referring to, right? So you provide input to an information system. That input is data, and typically the input would be maybe in the form of a form or something, or you upload a file, and then internally the IS will process the data, process it such that it can be persistently stored in a data store, and ultimately the processed data can be presented as information. Okay. Now this definition of an information system is broad here, right? When we're talking about a computerized or computer-based information system, we are making reference to an information system that will make use of software and hardware, right? So we see here that the layers or the components of a computerized or a computer-based information system are somewhat evolved in comparison to a general information system, right? Hence, we are saying here that your typical computerized or computer-based information system is an information system that combines people, hardware, software, communications infrastructure, and data stores, right? So that it's able to collect, to process, or transform the collected data and disseminate the processed data as information within an organization. Your social protection information management information system like ZSPIS is a computer-based information system. Because it's a computer-based information system, it is associated with these 6 layers here, right? Hardware, software, communications infrastructure, data sources. And we're saying databases here because the database is a common type of data store that is used, but a data store, people, very crucial, and procedures, rules, or regulations on how the information system will be used. The top layer, the 4 aspects, hardware, software, communications infrastructure, and your data stores or data sources, will form what's called the information technology layer. Okay? And unfortunately, by the way, I'm saying unfortunately, the emphasis for most organizations is always on the technology, right? But I want to argue, and I've always had this argument, that what's important are the 2 bottom layers, the people and procedures. Perhaps the simplest thing you can ever do when you're wanting to set up a computer-based information system is a top layer. Building the software is not a problem. Finding the appropriate hardware is not a problem. Setting up the required communications infrastructure is not a problem. Identifying or determining or deciding what sort of data store is going to be used, file-based versus database. So if it's a database, relational versus graph-based database, for instance, or no SQL database, is not a problem, right? The issue is always people. For instance, buy-in from people, right? Or challenges that people may have in terms of using the system, and procedures, of course. And just to give us just an overview of what we're going to be discussing when we start looking at information systems in our next module, which is, I believe, module number 2. When we're talking about hardware here, we are talking about the actual computer systems that will be used by people. When you work for the ministry, for instance, in all likelihood, you sit behind a desk here, and on your desk is a desktop computer, right? That's a form of hardware. There's also network-specific hardware, right? So this would facilitate, effective and efficient transmission of the data that is perhaps held by this social protection management information system. So think about the routers. I'm sure you've heard of the word, the router is down or something, or the switch is down, right? I don't know if you've heard of those things. Once upon a time, there would be network hardware like, the modem, right? But that's become obsolete now. All of those are types of hardware, but they perform different functionalities. And of course, it could be a specialized computer system called a server, right? Anyways, just to mention here that the hardware, in essence, comprise of the physical and tangible components. So you can touch your desktop computer, for instance, and your LCD screen, the monitor itself. If we want to get more detailed here, we can say if we look at a computer system, for instance, it comprises of sub-components, sub-hardware components like central processing unit, working memory, right? Your RAM, for instance, and in fact persistent storage, like your internal hard drive or hard disk or something. Right? In addition, though, we see that when we are using hardware like computer systems, there is other components that would need that may not necessarily be a part of the computer system, like a mouse, for instance, or a microphone, right? Or a keyboard, right? For you to key in the details of the beneficiary, separate from the computer itself. Again, we will discuss these things at length. And during our discussion, we shall at some point have a lengthy discussion of the broad spectrum of the most commonly used hardware, which is a computer, right? The computer system. It turns out that there are different types of computer systems within, I guess, the confines of a system like ZSpace, for instance. ZSpace would typically be deployed on a server computer system, and it would be accessed by users who will be using personal computers or microcomputers, but more on that at a later stage. And then the information technology layer will also have software, right? We see that as we are collecting summarized data or collecting data using this computer-based information system, and as we are disseminating the processed data as information, we make use of computer software. The obvious type of computer software we're making use of is the software that has to be installed on the computers we're using before we can interact with the social protection management information system or the information system. I'm talking about the operating system. You buy a new computer or you report for work for the first time. You say, well, we've bought a new computer for you, but the people from IT are yet to install the operating system, right? We shall make a distinction between, application software and system software at a later stage. We're just trying to provide a broad overview of these different layers that comprise of the information technology layer. Okay. Anyway, there's a range of software that are used here, and we'll distinguish application and system software at a later stage. For the most part, when we're using computers, we typically use application software, and indirectly we also use system software. In essence, as we are using application software to tell the hardware what to do, we go through system software, like the operating system, for instance. And then the communications infrastructure here will facilitate the transmission of data across the infrastructure used to deploy the information system. Like if we use this piece as an example, you could be in a different corner of Zambia, right? Not necessarily in Lusaka, but this piece is likely installed on servers that are located perhaps in Lusaka, right? I have no idea where the data center is or where the servers are. I don't know if it's at the ministry itself, not that it matters, but the argument we're trying to put across is before you can access this piece, your request, right? When you go to your browser and say, I want to access this piece, or in my case, I want to access the academic promotions too. It's installed on UNZA servers. I'm not at work today, right? I'm working from home, different part of Lusaka. I could just as well have been maybe in Eastern Province or maybe Southern Province or something. I'm able to access this because there's communications infrastructure, right, present. Granted, in my case, I'm accessing the system via the internet, It's public communications infrastructure. But in some instances, this could be private, so we'll have a discussion about the different sort of computer networks that facilitate the transmission of data and how the data is actually transmitted, okay? But really simply put, you'd really be assuming you are, let's say, using your laptop, for instance, or your smartphone to access this piece. You'd be going through your ISP, like I'm using Liquid myself today, and then through Liquid, maybe there are routers that will help propagate the data that or the request you're sending to the server until it gets to the server itself. And then the server sends back a response. It comes back to your computer, right? Communications infrastructure is crucial for that. At a later stage, we shall introduce this notion that the so-called communications infrastructure have actually evolved, right? Zambia is landlocked. This is common knowledge. Because it's landlocked, we have to transmit this data in a certain way. And I know things have changed here with the coming of entities like Starlink. But if you're using Liquid like I am, and I'm accessing a service that is located in a different part of the world, for instance, it turns out that my request and the data itself is sent to the server that has the information I want and sent back to me from that server by following a certain path. So we'll have a discussion about the wonderful advances that have been made in terms of these evolved computerized networks, right? So data will be transmitted via fiber links, for instance, until it finds itself places like South Africa, and then the data will be transmitted through underwater sea cables, if you've heard of that. And there are people that have done a wonderful job of mapping the different sort of underwater sea cables. But we'll talk about this in great detail. And then you have, the data store, right? Remember, we are saying that an information system collects data. If it collects the data, once collected, has to be permanently or persistently stored somewhere. That somewhere is what we're calling a data store. Now, the most common data store when you're handling information systems is a database, okay? And really, when you are now extracting information from an information system, what you're doing is you are gaining access to the data which is persistently stored in a database or any other data store that may be used. Okay, there's different types of ways of storing this data here. Ultimately, you'll be accessing that data as information because it would have been processed, or it will be processed by the information system, and then you get your reports or you get your spreadsheets or something. Okay. And then in terms of people here, just to mention that there's a broad spectrum of roles that we'll discuss that are involved when you're dealing with an information system, ranging from technically inclined people like system administrators, developers, right? Software engineers, software developers, to operators, right? People that actually use the system to collect the data itself. And indeed, people that use the system to generate reports. These are all crucial entities we're referring to as people that will be interacting with the information system. And then, of course, you would have, your so-called procedures, rules. When you have an information system, there are typically rules that govern how it's supposed to be used. There are procedures. This can be written, typically they're written down. maybe by your IT department, or it could be that your organization has specific policies that outline how these things are done. They'll tell you things like you cannot access this system outside of the company network. There's a course I teach, data mining, and I remember there was a colleague who was enrolled into the course, the postgraduate course. They were saying that when they were collecting certain type of data as part of their dissertation, they're not allowed to use laptops. Or really the laptops that they use are designed in such a way that you can't access the company network outside of the Zanaco network in that case. Anyway, so we'll talk about these procedures and give examples about procedures. I just wanted to give an overview of management information systems, and we provided this overview by latching on to aspects of an information system: hardware, software, communication, infrastructure, data sources, people, and procedures. When we meet on Tuesday, we start an in-depth discussion of these 6 aspects of an information system. I'm going to pause here and maybe ask if there are any thoughts or questions about this module or this lecture, conceptions of management information systems. Hopefully, this gives us an idea of what we are studying. Any thoughts? I see people are leaving here. I guess we've taken long. I don't know if there are any thoughts or questions. If not, then I'll do what I normally do. I hope this recording is not going to be botched. I'll share the recording for the benefit of maybe Miss Jen, who seemingly has a bit of a problem with her connection. And I'll see you on Tuesday then. Thank you very much.